One of the essential aspects that is needed between the two systems, your e-commerce system and your ERP, is up-to-date inventory. And so it is important that A, you have the up-to-date availability represented correctly, and B, you have the up-to-date SKU information represented correctly. First of all, if you've got multiple systems talking to each other, you've got from an IT perspective and from an expertise perspective, you're either paying somebody in a third party to support it, or you're having to pay somebody internally, to support it. So the knowledge base that they have to support disparate systems is there. Licensing. So, you've got a licensing, you've got to pay for licenses in System 1, System 2, it's the same user. You're paying essentially double the cost, to license a user on two systems versus one. So I think that's pretty key. And that to me is the least, of your problems really when we're talking about disconnected systems. The second is visibility. You've got to make strategic decisions. You've got to make fast decisions in this business. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. If you do not know what your true inventory looks like because you are talking to each other at certain times of the day, even if it's every hour, you don't really have that true visibility that you need to understand if you've got a customer on the phone, whether or not you can truly sell them the product without back ordering. Your order fulfillment and your production. When is my product coming in? That is also a big concern when we are managing this type of information outside of the core system, which we see a lot. Not really understanding when your product is coming in, and that speaks to inventory again. So I've got an external WMS. I've licensed out another provider to do that, and I've got my host ERP. Okay, well, we're going to talk to this warehouse, throughout the day. The warehouse received something, and you've got to get an order for that receipt out today. Your cancel date is today. If you are not exchanging data prominently and quickly enough, you could very well miss that order. So you really need to be able to exchange that data in a meaningful, timely way. Disconnected systems simply just do not do that, especially in this industry with these legacy ERPs that are essentially outdated. So efficiency, is another one. If I've got a third-party system managing some of my work, I've got redundant data entry and maintenance happening, right? So if I've got an external warehouse management system, and then I've got my host ERP, I'm essentially having to set up my styles, in two places in order to, maintain both of those systems. And that's just one example. What those two systems have in common. Essentially, you have to repeat yourself in getting that data in the system so that they can talk to each other efficiently. One instance that comes just readily to mind when we talk about, one of the problems in a workflow or something that is broken in a workflow, immediately we're talking about e-commerce, right? So e-commerce is a quick reacting, often end consumer, but also can be B2B, integration between a host and the B2B platform. One of the essential aspects that is needed between the two systems, your e-commerce system and your ERP, is up-to-date inventory. And so it is important that A, you have the up-to-date availability represented correctly, and B, you have the up-to-date SKU information represented correctly, right? So what I'm finding and what I've found with a client on their legacy system is that it can be such a resource pool to actually grab all of that inventory. You're talking about tens of thousands of SKUs. And so we're talking about a big pull when we're grabbing those SKUs and the inventory for each one of them and updating the e-commerce system accordingly with that. Think about that. So that's taking a lot of system time and resource to be able to do that. This client can only run that process off hours once per day. I mean, that's kind of insane when you think about it. And so you are missing a ton of opportunity in representing your available to sell correctly when you're not doing that more often throughout the day, when you're not doing it more effectively throughout the day. And so what ultimately happens is you're under or overselling, your product because your inventory isn't properly represented. So that's one very key disconnect between disconnected systems. Exchanging data between an e-commerce system and a Vantex, is a different story from one that our people are used to seeing. And it is a great feeling to be able to say to my client, oh, you're not going to be sending them your inventory once a day. You're not going to be doing that anymore. They're going to have far more up-to-date visibility as to, what you can sell, what you are capable to sell, what's available, and even more when it's coming in. So, that's a big deal. Understanding if it's not there today, it'll be there by the end of the week. It'll be there by the end of the month. And so, you're serving your customers best. And if you want customer retention, you'd better tell that, you'd better give them the big picture of what you're able to give them and when.